A woman grows jealous of her boss's new favorite employee and reveals a secret she wasn't meant to know. Marissa Bennett, 32 years old, with soft olive-toned skin, neatly tied chestnut brown hair and sharp hazel eyes behind rectangular glasses, had spent nearly 8 years in the finance department of Riddle & Co. Her dark navy skirt suit was almost a uniform at this point, and so was her habit of keeping her head down and her work flawless. But recently, the quiet hum of her daily routine had been disrupted. That disruption came in the form of Lila Cortez, a 27-year-old with glossy black hair that fell in perfect waves, warm caramel skin, and a smile that could make even the most stone-faced executive loosen his tie. From the day Lila stepped into the office, her laughter was like a spotlight cutting through the gray monotony, drawing attention and admiration from everyone, including Daniel Reed, the department's tall, broad-shouldered director with salt and pepper hair and an easy, commanding charm. Marissa had worked under Daniel for years, earning his trust and subtle respect, but in the past few weeks she noticed a change. His emails to her grew shorter, his tone brisk. His office door stayed open for Lila far more than it ever had for her. It wasn't just about attention. Something deeper unsettled Marissa. In the corporate world, shifts in favor could mean the difference between a promotion and a pink slip. And as she watched Daniel lean just a bit too close to Lila during a meeting, Marissa felt the first hot coil of jealousy tighten in her chest. Marissa, still dressed in her dark navy skirt suit with her chestnut brown hair pulled back into a tidy bun, watched from behind her computer screen as Daniel and Lila shared another hushed conversation near the coffee station. Lila's caramel-toned skin caught the glare of the fluorescent lights, her black waves swaying as she tilted her head and laughed. Too easily, too openly. Daniel, towering in his crisp gray suit and polished black shoes, stood closer than necessary, his eyes lingering just a fraction too long. Marissa's hazel eyes narrowed behind her glasses. She had always prided herself on reading people, on catching the subtleties others missed, and right now the subtleties were screaming. The way Daniel's hand brushed Lila's arm as he handed her a coffee cup, the softness in his usually firm voice, the way Lila's gaze lingered on his lips instead of his eyes, it was all there. She turned back to her computer screen, but her reflection in the darkened monitor caught her attention. Her own face looked stern, the corners of her mouth tight. She barely recognized the woman staring back. The envy had sharpened her expression, and for the first time in years she realized she wasn't simply being overlooked, she was being replaced. The change became more obvious in the days that followed. Daniel, in his tailored navy blue suit and always polished demeanor, began assigning Lila tasks that had once been exclusively Marissa's responsibility: financial report reviews, high-profile meeting prep, even direct client follow-ups. Lila, with her radiant caramel skin and effortless charm, never seemed to break a sweat. She walked into meetings in soft pastel blouses paired with sleek pencil skirts, her black hair cascading over her shoulders, always carrying the faint scent of floral perfume. Marissa, by contrast, felt almost invisible in her sensible navy and white outfits, her perfume a subtle hint of lavender that no one seemed to notice. One afternoon, Marissa overheard Daniel offering Lila an invite to a working dinner at a high-end restaurant. His tone was casual, but Marissa caught the flicker of something else in his voice. She sat frozen at her desk, staring at the screen but hearing nothing but the sound of their laughter echoing down the hall. It wasn't just favoritism, it was personal. It happened on a Thursday morning. Marissa arrived early, her navy skirt rustling softly as she moved, clutching a folder filled with data Daniel had requested. She found the conference room already occupied. Daniel and Lila were seated close, papers spread out before them. Daniel's tie was loosened, his salt and pepper hair slightly ruffled, and Lila's lips curved into a knowing smile. "Morning," Marissa greeted, forcing brightness into her voice. Daniel glanced up briefly. "We started early. I'll catch you up later." The words stung more than they should have. She took a seat at the far end of the table, trying not to look like an outsider in what used to be her territory. But as Daniel leaned toward Lila, speaking in low tones only she could hear, Marissa's mind began to race. She wondered how many meetings had taken place without her, how many opportunities she'd missed, not by accident but by design. Later that week, while passing Daniel's office, Marissa heard laughter, low, intimate. His door was slightly ajar. She hesitated, her polished black pumps silent on the carpet. Inside, Daniel sat behind his desk leaning forward while Lila perched on the edge, her caramel skin glowing under the warm desk lamp. Her blouse was unbuttoned just one notch more than usual, and Daniel's hand rested far too close to her knee. Marissa's breath caught. She should walk away. She should pretend she hadn't seen. but instead she lingered for a moment longer, the image burning into her mind. It wasn't just unprofessional, it was risky, dangerous. She moved on quickly, heart pounding, but the thought refused to leave her. She knew the company had strict policies on workplace relationships, especially involving direct supervisors. If this ever came to light, both Daniel and Lila could face serious consequences. For the first time, her jealousy wasn't just about losing favor, it was about holding a weapon she didn't even mean to find. Marissa barely slept that night. Her hazel eyes stared at the ceiling, replaying the scene in Daniel's office over and over. The jealousy she'd tried to suppress had grown into something sharper, something that whispered of opportunity. She thought of the years she had spent covering for Daniel's last-minute requests, correcting his mistakes before clients saw them, staying late without thanks. She thought of the bonuses she never received, the promotions she was quietly passed over for, all while Daniel praised her dedication. Now she was watching him throw away professionalism for someone who had been in the company less than 6 months. Dressed in her usual crisp navy suit the next morning, chestnut hair pinned back with precision, she walked into the office with a new resolve. If Daniel wanted to risk everything, she would be ready to expose it. All she needed was proof, something undeniable, something that couldn't be explained away as just a misunderstanding. The idea both thrilled and terrified her, but once the seed was planted, it began to grow roots. Marissa, still in her perfectly pressed navy skirt suit with her chestnut brown hair pulled back into a tight bun, waited until most of the office had emptied for lunch. Her hazel eyes darted toward Daniel's corner office. The blinds were half closed, the door locked, but she knew he often left his laptop on sleep mode rather than shutting it down. She slipped off her black pumps to silence her steps and walked quietly to the door. To her luck, the cleaning crew had propped it open with a cart. Inside, the air smelled faintly of Daniel's cologne, woody and sharp. She approached his desk and glanced at the laptop. The screen came to life with a soft glow. She didn't dare touch it yet, but she noted the open email inbox, the tab showing a hotel booking confirmation for 2. Her pulse spiked. The names weren't visible from her angle, but she didn't need to guess. Footsteps echoed in the hall. Marissa slipped out quickly, her heart hammering. She had seen enough to know she was on the right path. Proof was within reach, she just needed the courage to take it. The following day, Marissa found herself in the break room with Ben, a fellow finance analyst in his mid-30s, with sandy hair, a slightly rumpled gray shirt, and the kind of cautious smile that suggested he saw more than he let on. "I've noticed you've been tense lately," Ben said casually as he poured coffee. Marissa's hazel eyes narrowed. "Tense?" he shrugged. "Let's just say you're not the only one who's picked up on whatever's going on between Daniel and Lila." Her breath caught. She hadn't expected anyone else to speak openly about it. Ben leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. "If you're thinking about doing something, I might be able to help. I've seen a few things." It was risky to trust him, but the thought of having someone on the inside was too tempting to ignore. She kept her expression neutral but said, "Let's talk after hours." The seed of her plan was now sprouting new branches. That night, the office was nearly deserted when Marissa and Ben sat in the dim glow of her desk lamp. Ben, in his worn gray shirt, tapped at his keyboard with practiced speed. "Daniel's not as careful as he thinks," he murmured. "I've seen emails forwarded to Lila's personal account, flirty ones, attachments that had nothing to do with work." Marissa, still in her navy suit, leaned closer, her hazel eyes scanning the screen. And then she saw it, a chain of messages between Daniel and Lila, full of playful banter, dinner reservations, and even a photo of Lila in a sleek black dress, her caramel skin glowing under candlelight. "This is exactly what I need," Marissa whispered. Ben raised a brow. "Be careful. You start something like this, there's no undoing it." But Marissa had already crossed that line in her mind. This wasn't about caution anymore. It was about making sure she wasn't erased from the company she'd given nearly a decade to. Friday brought the perfect setup. Daniel, in his navy suit and silver tie, announced that he and Lila would be stepping out for client networking that afternoon. Marissa knew it meant hours without their presence, and a chance to get something irrefutable. With the office quieter than usual, she slipped into Daniel's office. The blinds were drawn, his laptop closed, but his desk drawer wasn't locked. Inside, she found a printed hotel invoice with 2 names, Daniel Reed and Lila Cortez, dated last weekend. Her fingers trembled as she pulled out her phone and snapped photos. The paper felt heavier than it should have, as though it carried the weight of careers and reputations. She slid it back into place before anyone could notice. Walking back to her desk, she felt a strange mix of exhilaration and dread. She had the proof. Now came the decision, what to do with it. That night, Marissa couldn't stop staring at the photos on her phone. her hazel eyes, reflected in the dark glass of her apartment window, looked sharper, colder than before. She thought of all the ways she could use this information, anonymously leaking it to HR, sending it to the board, or even confronting Daniel directly. For the first time in years, she felt like she had control. But with that control came the intoxicating danger of wielding it. One wrong move, and she could be the one out of a job, or worse, sued for defamation. Still, she imagined Daniel's face when the truth came crashing down. She pictured Lila's perfect smile faltering under the weight of exposure. The thought was enough to make her lips curl into a small, dangerous smile. The next step wouldn't be easy, but she was ready to take it. On Monday morning, Marissa arrived earlier than usual, her crisp navy skirt suit immaculate, chestnut brown hair smoothed into a tight bun, hazel eyes already scanning the office for any sign of Daniel or Lila. Neither had arrived. She took a seat at her desk, the photos of the hotel invoice still sitting in a locked folder on her phone, and began drafting an anonymous email. The words were precise, stripped of emotion but heavy with implication. Attached are documents suggesting an undisclosed relationship between Director Reed and employee Cortez, potentially in violation of company policy. She attached the photographs, her fingers steady despite the storm in her chest. But before hitting send, she hesitated. Once this left her hands, there would be no going back. She saved the draft instead, sliding her phone into her drawer. The opening move didn't need to be the final strike, at least not yet. She wanted to watch them squirm first. Marissa chose a subtler start. That afternoon, she lingered near the coffee station as two marketing assistants chatted. "Did you hear about Daniel and Lila?" she asked casually, her hazel eyes wide with faux innocence. They leaned in. "No, what about them?" "Oh, nothing concrete," Marissa said, lowering her voice. "Just, they've been spending a lot of time together." Outside the office, she walked away before they could press for details, but she didn't need to. Gossip in the corporate halls was like wildfire. Once sparked, it spread with frightening speed. By the end of the day, she noticed Daniel looking irritated during meetings, his salt and pepper hair slightly disheveled, Lila's usual bright smile replaced by a tight-lipped expression. The waters were stirring, and Marissa found herself enjoying the ripples. By Wednesday, the air in the office had changed. Daniel avoided lingering near Lila's desk. Lila, still stunning in her pastel blouses and pencil skirts, seemed less radiant, her caramel skin shadowed by a faint unease. Marissa, in her perfectly pressed navy suit, felt the subtle thrill of watching her rivals lose their composure. But she also noticed something she hadn't expected: Ben avoiding her. When she caught him in the break room, his sandy hair slightly mussed, he barely met her gaze. "You didn't tell me you were going to start rumors," he said quietly. Marissa feigned surprise. "Rumors? I just made an observation," Ben sighed. "Be careful, Marissa. If this gets traced back to you, Daniel won't hesitate to throw you under the bus." She smiled thinly. "Then I'll just have to make sure it can't be traced." The next morning, Marissa received an email from Daniel. "Join me in my office at 4 p.m. The subject line was blunt, no pleasantries, no explanation. When she entered, Daniel was seated behind his desk, his tailored suit flawless but his expression tight. "Close the door," he said. She obeyed, her hazel eyes giving nothing away. "I've been hearing things," he began, his voice measured. "About me. About Lila." Marissa tilted her head slightly. "Office gossip can be cruel." He studied her for a long moment. "You've always been loyal, Marissa. I hope you still are." His tone carried a subtle warning. But she knew something he didn't. Loyalty was no longer on the table. The following days brought an odd tension. Lila's black waves still framed her face perfectly, her caramel skin glowing under the office lights. But her laugh was gone. Daniel became curt in meetings, and his door stayed closed more often. Marissa noticed HR's director lingering near Daniel's office twice in one day. Whether it was coincidence or the beginning of an inquiry, she couldn't tell, but it made her pulse quicken. At the same time, her own position felt less stable. Ben avoided her entirely now, and a few colleagues seemed to glance at her longer than usual, as though wondering if she was the spark behind the whispers. She was close to her goal, but the pressure was starting to squeeze from both sides, and with each passing hour, she felt the line between control and exposure growing dangerously thin. By Monday, the tension was unbearable. Marissa, still dressed in her crisp navy skirt suit, chestnut brown hair pinned perfectly, could feel the storm brewing. Lila walked in late, her black waves slightly frizzed, her caramel skin lacking its usual glow. Daniel was already in his office, pacing behind his desk in his tailored gray suit, phone pressed tightly to his ear. Just before lunch, voices rose from behind Daniel's closed door. Marissa couldn't hear every word, but the tone was unmistakable, sharp, urgent, defensive. When the door burst open, Lila stormed past, clutching her handbag. eyes glistening but jaw set. Daniel followed moments later, his salt and pepper hair slightly disheveled, scanning the office as though hunting for an enemy. Marissa kept her hazel eyes fixed on her computer screen, her pulse steady. She knew the chain reaction had begun. By Wednesday morning, an email from HR landed in everyone's inbox. "We are conducting a confidential review regarding workplace conduct. All employees may be contacted for interviews." Marissa's heart gave a quick, triumphant kick. She had expected whispers, but now it was official. She was called into the HR director's office that afternoon. Dressed immaculately, hands folded neatly in her lap, she answered every question with calm precision. "I can't speak to their personal lives," she told them. "But I have noticed closeness, late-night meetings, out-of-office dinners." Her statements were careful, not lies, but perfectly crafted truths. As she left, she caught sight of Daniel entering the same office, his jaw tight, his eyes briefly meeting hers. It wasn't anger she saw there, it was suspicion. The fallout came fast. Lila stopped coming to work altogether, her desk stripped of personal items overnight. Daniel remained, but his position was suddenly under review, his once confident stride replaced with a quieter, more guarded presence. The power he had wielded over the department was gone, replaced by a silence that made the air heavy. Marissa, still in her navy suits and lavender perfume, moved through the office like nothing had happened, yet she felt the shift. Co-workers glanced at her with a mixture of curiosity and caution. Ben didn't speak to her, but when their eyes met across the hall, his look said everything. "I know what you did." The strange thing was, despite achieving exactly what she wanted, Marissa felt a hollow space inside her. The victory wasn't as sweet as she'd imagined, it was lonely. A week later, as Marissa sat at her desk typing up a quarterly report, an email arrived from an unknown sender. "Enjoy the spotlight while it lasts." Attached was a single photo, the hotel invoice she had photographed. Her hazel eyes widened, scanning the crowded office. No one looked her way, but her skin prickled. Whoever had sent it knew the truth, and that meant her carefully hidden involvement wasn't as safe as she'd believed. She closed the email quickly, forcing her breathing to steady. The battle was over, but a new game had just begun. As she glanced toward Daniel's now empty office, Marissa realized one thing. In this place, whispers never truly die. They just change their target. If you enjoyed this story and want more tales of jealousy, betrayal, and unexpected twists, make sure to subscribe. The next secret might be darker than the last.